Once upon a time, the world woke up every morning inside the mind of Greece. Numbers, stars, medicine, logic, democracy, geometry, philosophy, and even the idea of asking why instead of blindly believing what were gifts wrapped in Greek thought. The shadows of Plato walked inside classrooms across continents. Aristotle whispered through laboratories centuries after his death, and Hippocrates still stood silently beside hospital beds. Greece did not merely study science and technology. It invented the rules by which knowledge itself was measured. Yet today, when the world speaks of innovation, the names that dominate are not Athens or Alexandria, but Silicon Valley, Shenzhen, Berlin, Seoul, and Tokyo. This contrast creates a haunting psychological question that pulls at the human mind. How did the land that taught humanity how to think fall behind in the race it once started? The first reason lies in the cruel interruption of continuity. Knowledge, like fire, must be constantly fed. Ancient Greece's brilliance was not inherited smoothly by later generations. Wars, invasions, and internal conflicts repeatedly shattered the transmission of ideas. When Rome absorbed Greece, much was preserved, but later centuries brought waves of destruction. Libraries burned, academies closed, and scholars scattered. Science thrives on accumulation, but Greece's intellectual chain was broken multiple times, forcing humanity's torch of progress to be carried elsewhere. Then came the long shadow of foreign rule, especially the centuries under the Ottoman Empire. While Europe experienced the Renaissance, scientific revolution, and industrial age, Greece was struggling for cultural survival. Education was limited, institutions were tightly controlled, and scientific curiosity was not encouraged. When other nations were building laboratories, Greece was fighting to preserve language, faith, and identity. Survival replaced innovation as the national priority, and the psychological cost of that shift lasted generations. Another powerful reason is economic fragility. Science and technology demand long-term investment, patience, and risk-taking. Modern Greece has often faced economic instability, debt crises, and austerity. When a society is anxious about salaries, pensions, and daily survival, funding research feels like a luxury. Bright minds grow up learning to seek stability rather than experimentation. Innovation dies quietly when fear becomes the dominant emotion of a nation. Closely connected to this is brain drain, one of the most painful wounds in Greece's modern story. Greece still produces brilliant students, engineers, doctors, and scientists, but many leave. They do not leave because they lack talent. They leave because they lack opportunity. When ambitious minds repeatedly find better funding, recognition, and freedom abroad, innovation migrates with them. The tragedy is psychological as much as practical. A nation begins to believe that excellence belongs somewhere else. Education itself also shifted in nature. Ancient Greek education trained minds to question, debate, and challenge assumptions. Over time, modern education in Greece, like in many places, became more exam-focused and rigid. Memorization replaced exploration. Fear of failure replaced love of discovery. Science is born when mistakes are welcomed as teachers, but systems that punish failure quietly suffocate innovation. Political instability further slowed momentum. Frequent changes in policies, leadership, and national direction made long-term scientific planning difficult. Great scientific revolutions required decades of consistency, but Greece often found itself restarting rather than building forward. When institutions lack stability, trust erodes, and without trust, collaboration collapses. Science cannot breathe in an atmosphere of uncertainty. Cultural pride, ironically, also played a role. Greece's glorious past became both a crown and a cage. When a civilization is constantly reminded that it once stood at the peak of human thought, there is a subtle psychological risk of living in remembrance rather than reinvention. Admiring ancient statues is not the same as building new machines. Reverence for the past sometimes overshadowed the urgency of competing in the present. Geography and scale matter too. Greece is a relatively small country with limited natural resources compared to industrial giants. Modern technology ecosystems often rely on massive internal markets, heavy manufacturing bases, and large-scale funding. While small nations can innovate, they must be extremely strategic. Greece often lacked the coordinated national strategy required to turn its intellectual potential into technological leadership. Another reason is delayed industrialization. While Western Europe transformed through factories, railways, and mechanization, Greece entered industrial development later and more slowly. Industrial revolutions create not only wealth, but also technical culture, engineering traditions, and problem-solving habits. Missing that wave meant starting the modern race several steps behind. Global power shifts also redirected influence. As science became increasingly tied to military power, colonial expansion, and industrial dominance, countries with strong empires gained technological advantages. Greece, emerging from occupation and poverty, did not have the geopolitical leverage to dominate research agendas or global innovation pathways. Yet perhaps the most human reason of all lies in psychology. Trauma leaves scars. Centuries of conquest, occupation, economic hardship, and crisis shaped a collective mindset focused on caution rather than risk. Innovation requires boldness, rebellion against norms, and faith in the future. When societies experience repeated disappointment, they unconsciously lower expectations. Dreams shrink. Potential remains, but belief fades. And still, this story is not a funeral. It is a mirror. Greece did not lose intelligence, creativity, or genius. It lost momentum. The same land that once asked the universe what it was made of still produces thinkers who ask deep questions. The difference is not in the DNA of the people, but in the structure around them. History shows that leadership in science is not permanent. It moves where conditions allow curiosity to flourish. Today, Greek scientists contribute quietly but powerfully across the world. Greek mathematicians solve problems in foreign universities. Greek engineers design systems in global companies, and Greek doctors push medical boundaries abroad. The flame has not died. It has been scattered. And scattered flames, when gathered again, can burn brighter than before. The psychological lesson hidden in Greece's journey is universal. Past glory does not guarantee future success, and present struggle does not erase ancient brilliance. Science and technology are not inherited like monuments. They must be rebuilt every generation. Greece's story reminds the world that civilizations fall behind, not because they forget how to think, but because circumstances, systems, and confidence slowly shift. Perhaps the most powerful twist in this story is that Greece already knows the cure. It once taught humanity that progress begins with questioning, courage, and imagination. If history moves in cycles, then the nation that once gave birth to science may yet surprise the world again. Not by repeating the past, but by daring to reinvent itself in the language of the future.